Every other great ape on this planet is covered in fur. Chimpanzees, gorillas, bonobos, orangutans, all of them, fur from head to toe. Then there's us, mostly naked, with a thin layer of fine hair that does almost nothing for warmth or protection, standing in a world that did not design itself with naked skin in mind. At some point in our evolutionary history, something happened. The fur went away, and for a long time, nobody could explain exactly why. The obvious answer, the one that feels intuitive, is that we lost it because we learned to make clothes and build fires and no longer needed it. That answer is wrong. The timeline doesn't work. Humans lost most of their body hair somewhere between 1.2 and 1.7 million years ago. The earliest convincing evidence of controlled fire use is around 1 million years ago, and widespread fire use comes much later. Sewn clothing capable of replacing fur doesn't appear until roughly 170,000 years ago at the earliest. We were already naked for hundreds of thousands of years before we had anything to replace the fur with, so why did we lose it before we had a plan? There are several theories, and they're not mutually exclusive, but one of them is stranger and more compelling than the rest. To get there, we need to start with the problem that nakedness actually solved. Around 2 million years ago, the African climate shifted. Forests shrank. Grasslands expanded. Our ancestors were pushed out of the shade and into open savanna, an environment defined by two things, distance and heat. On open grassland, food is spread out. Finding it means covering ground. A lot of ground, every day, in direct sun, at midday temperatures that would kill most large mammals if they tried to move through them. Most large mammals don't. Lions hunt at dawn and dusk and rest through the hottest hours. Zebras, wildebeest, antelope, they graze in the morning and afternoon and go still in the worst heat. The savanna at noon is nearly empty of active animals, not because there are no animals there, but because the ones that are there have stopped moving. Our ancestors started moving anyway, and to do that, they had to solve a heat problem that no other primate had ever faced at that scale. The key is sweat. Humans are, by a significant margin, the sweatiest animals on Earth. We have between 2 and 5 million eccrine sweat glands distributed across nearly our entire body surface. Most mammals have sweat glands concentrated on specific areas, paws, muzzles, and rely primarily on panting for cooling. We sweat everywhere, constantly, in volumes that would be dangerous in other species. This system is extraordinarily efficient for heat dissipation. As sweat evaporates from the skin surface, it carries heat away from the body. The problem with fur is that it traps a layer of warm air against the skin and blocks airflow, dramatically reducing the efficiency of evaporative cooling. A furry human sweating through a layer of dense hair is a human whose cooling system is partially disabled. Losing the fur in this framing was not about warmth, it was about becoming a better radiator. Naked skin exposed directly to moving air allows sweat to evaporate instantly and efficiently. It turned the human body into a cooling machine precise enough to sustain continuous physical activity in conditions that forced every other large mammal to stop. And that ability, and to keep moving when everything else had stopped, turned out to be one of the most powerful advantages in the history of predation. It's called persistence hunting, and some human populations practiced it until very recently. The method is simple and brutal. You find an animal, a kudu, a wildebeest, a deer, and you chase it. Not at full sprint. You don't need to outrun it. You just need to keep it moving. Animals that flee a predator at full speed generate enormous heat. Quadrupeds dissipate heat primarily through panting, but panting requires the lungs to work in rhythm with the gait. They can pant or they can run flat out, but not both at full capacity simultaneously. In the worst heat of the day, a running quadruped builds up heat faster than it can lose it. The human following it does not have this problem. The human is sweating, cooling continuously, maintaining a steady trot. The human is uncomfortable. The animal is dying. You follow it for hours, 2 hours, 4 hours, sometimes more. Every time it stops to rest, you drive it forward again. Eventually, and this is documented in accounts from sand hunters in the Kalahari, from the Tarahumara in Mexico, from Aboriginal Australians, the animal simply collapses from hyperthermia. It overheats and goes down. And you walk up to it. No projectile weapons required, no elaborate traps, just legs, sweat, and the willingness to keep going at noon when everything else has stopped. This is what the naked body was built for. Not warmth, not display, the ability to run something to death in the African sun. But the fur story doesn't end there, because losing fur created a new problem that needed its own solution. Naked skin is vulnerable to UV radiation specifically. Ultraviolet light damages DNA, breaks down folate, a B vitamin essential for fetal development and cell repair, and over time causes cancer. Fur had been providing significant UV protection. Without it, our ancestors needed something else. The answer was melanin. The pigment that gives skin its color is also a natural UV filter, absorbing and neutralizing radiation before it can penetrate deeper tissue layers. Dark, heavily pigmented skin provides substantial protection against UV damage, and the genetic and fossil evidence strongly suggests that when humans lost their fur, they evolved dark skin almost immediately to compensate. The earliest naked humans were almost certainly very darkly pigmented. Not because of geography exactly, but because of the specific trade they had made, trading fur for sweat efficiency, and the UV exposure that trade created. This has a striking implication. The skin color diversity we see in humans today is not the ancestral condition. It is a later adaptation, one that happened when populations moved out of Africa and into lower UV environments where heavy melanin became unnecessary, and where lighter skin offered advantages in vitamin D synthesis from weaker sunlight. We are all descended from dark-skinned ancestors. The variation came after. It is recent, geographically driven, and a thin layer of pigment on top of the deeper story, which is about sweat and speed, and a naked ape chasing something across a sunlit plain that had no idea it was already beaten. There is also a secondary theory worth mentioning, one that doesn't replace the thermoregulation argument but potentially runs alongside it. It involves parasites. Fur is habitat. Dense body hair is an ideal environment for lice, fleas, ticks, and mites, external parasites that feed on blood and can transmit serious diseases. As our ancestors began living in larger social groups, sharing sleeping spaces, and spending more time in close physical contact, the parasite load that comes with fur would have become increasingly costly. Naked skin is dramatically less hospitable to most external parasites. Losing fur would have reduced disease burden in a population that was becoming more social. The two theories, thermoregulation and parasite resistance, point in the same direction at the same time. Both would have made nakedness advantageous in a species moving into open environments and building larger communities. Evolution doesn't need one reason, it just needs the math to work out. And so here we are, the only naked ape. Sweating through summers, burning in the sun, spending fortunes on clothing to replace what our ancestors discarded 2 million years ago for the ability to run something to death at noon. The fur didn't disappear because we became civilized. It disappeared because something in our past decided that cooling down mattered more than staying covered. And that decision, inconvenient as it is on a cold morning, is a large part of why we're still here.